So this law that is being proposed in Congress that the Biden administration advocates, there are two of them. One is called the Restrict Act. The other one is called the Data Act. These are the two laws that have been written that, if they pass, would give the power to the Biden administration to ban TikTok. The problem, among many others, is that this power is not applicable solely to TikTok. It is not a law about TikTok. It is a law about a new power that the government has in their hands, one that will allow the government, the Biden administration in this case, not only to ban TikTok, but any other social media platform or technological device that it, in its own unreviewable discretion, determines is a national security threat in some way to the United States. So if, for example, the United States government, which we know from all kinds of reporting, including the Twitter files, is eager to get its hands on the internet, has already had its hands on the internet to control the flow of information, decides that, say, Twitter, under Elon Musk's management, is not censoring enough foreign disinformation, enough fake news, and has become a national security threat, this bill would empower the Biden administration to severely limit Twitter, to impose all kinds of restraints on it, or even to banish it completely, the way it is now being proposed to be done with TikTok. That's what this law would actually do. So they're trying to exploit your anger toward China, your fear of China, and your dislike for TikTok to enact a law that will allow the government to do far, far, far more than just ban TikTok. Exactly what we saw over and over in the war on terror. Now, I'm going to be on Tucker Carlson's show in just a few minutes talking about exactly that question, the scope of the law. And I believe his view, though I don't want to speak for him, is that he hates TikTok, hates the CCP. I don't think would mind necessarily seeing TikTok disappear, but nonetheless has grave concerns about the scope of the law and the powers we're about to vest on the government, and asked me to come on the show to talk about exactly that. So here is an article from Lawfare, which I'm using on purpose because it's a blog written by people very close to the U.S. security state. These are people who were the leading Russiagators, who endorsed everything James Comey and the CIA and Homeland Security did and do during the Snowden reporting. These were the people who were essentially advocating that not just Edward Snowden, but myself and the journalists who worked on that story were criminals. These are the people who are as close to the U.S. security state as you can get, and even they are very worried that this law is far too excessive and subject to abuse. Here is the title, quote, "Two new bills on TikTok and beyond, the Data Act and the Restrict Act." It's by Justin Sherman, and he writes, quote, "Perhaps this approach is better," comparing the two laws. "The Restrict Act focuses on broad risk categories that can encompass a range of ever-changing techniques for digital sabotage, subversion, espionage, and influence. It does not pigeonhole itself into putting the exact tactics of the day into law, which are sure to change and which a foreign actor could then easily dance around. Simultaneously, the risk categories are incredibly broad," meaning the categories the Biden administration gets to identify as risky and therefore subject to the powers of these laws are incredibly broad. While the definition of something like election interference could be relatively scoped, the fourth risk category, including trying to steer policy and regulatory decisions in a foreign government's favor, is potentially boundless. It is also easy to imagine industry concerns about the broadness of these categories. So, some of the categories that allow the government to ban apps, not just TikTok but others, include the view that the app is being used for foreign interference in our elections, the way the Biden administration believes Russia did using Twitter and Facebook. It could force Twitter and Facebook to start censoring. It has this gigantic club in its hands now that says we have the power to actually banish you from functioning in the United States as a result of this new law, and if you don't start censoring more, we will conclude, the executive branch, that you are now a national security threat because you are allowing election interference. Or worse, you are allowing, the language here is, trying to steer policy and regulatory decisions in a foreign government's favor. So if you're somebody using a social media app like Twitter or Facebook to steer, or Rumble, to do something that the government deems is steering policy and regulatory decisions in a foreign government's favor. For example, if you're against the US proxy war in Ukraine and use Rumble to argue against it, or use Twitter to argue against it, that platform could be deemed to be allowing the steering of policy and regulatory decisions in a foreign government's favor, and therefore ban it on that ground as a national security threat. After everything you've seen over the past 6 years, with Democrats repeatedly trying to get the internet censored on the grounds that fake news and disinformation is being disseminated by the Russian government, they banned President Trump, Twitter did, and Facebook did. They prohibited any discussion of the reporting by the New York Post about Joe Biden and China and Ukraine on the grounds that that was disinformation. After everything we've seen from the Twitter files, proving that the US security state is not only eager to, but has in fact achieved the power to determine what isn't permitted on the internet, after all of that, do you actually trust the government with the power to ban entire social media apps simply by decreeing that they constitute national security threats? Don't you think that power is going to be radically abused, either by threatening social media apps that they better start censoring more if they don't want this punishment being imposed on them, or by in fact banning apps like, say, Rumble that refuse to obey and comply? I know there's a lot of animosity toward the Chinese Communist Party. I understand all that. And I also realize that the Chinese have become more aggressive in competing with the United States for hegemony over regions that the United States were previously unchallenged in, including Africa, Latin America, and now even the Middle East, where they just forged a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But just like our anger at Al-Qaeda was repeatedly exploited to give the government powers we should not have given them, I think we need to be very careful not to let this bipartisan unity against China, valid or not, be used to get you to agree things, at least without thinking them through. Just the minute something is called a measure to protect you from China or anti-China, you immediately say yes without anything further, because we're acting on our emotions and our anger and our rage to Beijing, as opposed to being concerned about our own country and our rights here at home. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.